fire upon the robots, keep repeating the pattern until you've taken at least one of them out, and then it's a very simple thing, just waiting for the last one in order to get a good hit out on it. Once it's done, we've completed the first of Mr. X's stages, and now we move on to stage number 2. Now, Mr. X Stage 2 isn't overall too challenging of a level, but it definitely has one of the most annoying, if not hardest, bosses to deal with of the robot bosses in these final stages. If you haven't gotten really good at controlling the Rush Jet adapter at this point in the game, you're going to have to learn pretty quickly, because we're going to need it in order to defeat the boss of this stage. Now here we have some classic falling platforms, and when we get to the right here, we're going to go ahead and switch to the Rush Jet adapter, and then go ahead and fly easily over this gap. Now I'm just going to go ahead and keep the Rush Jet adapter equipped and fly over most of the enemies, since they're pretty easy to fly over, and it just makes for an overall easier experience when trying to travel through the level. You want to be careful still, though, that you don't accidentally run out of jet fuel or get hit by an enemy and end up falling into one of the pits, though it's pretty easy to overall dodge them. We have one last room full of Matools before we enter the robot layer of the stage. Now for this boss, my suggestion is staying on the left side of the screen, usually hugging the left wall, because the rocks that fall from the sky can't hit you on the left wall. What you need to do is you need to fly up and then deliver a quick shot when you can in order to hit the center of the robot on the wall. You also want to, of course, be dodging the projectiles at all times. The rocks aren't going to be a factor, though they are an annoyance to keep exploding like that, and sometimes I think the explosion can hit you if you're on the ground. So when you see them coming close to you, or at least as close as they can, start to fly up then so that you can either deliver a shot to the robot, and you're also going to dodge that rock exploding. This battle ends up being a pretty lengthy battle overall, considering, some of the other boss battles that we've had to deal with in the game. But it's pretty easy if you can master the Rush Jet ability, and you definitely can dodge the rocks by hugging that left wall. You can see, unfortunately, you only deliver one little smidge of damage every time you deliver a hit to him. Now, you can defeat this boss with just the Mega Buster if you wanted to. You can use full charged up blast when it gets low enough, and if you want to, you can try to jump and hit him with one of those blasts. However, it's much easier to just go ahead and use the Rush Jet adapter in order to deliver the small hits to him. You'll be able to dodge more, as well as you'll probably be able to hit him more. After a pretty lengthy battle he's taken care of, and we move on to Mr. X Stage number 3. Now this stage as a whole is pretty difficult to navigate because there's going to be a lot of platforming that we're going to have to do throughout it. However, using the Rush Jet adapter like we've been doing in the previous stages makes for an overall easier experience when trying to complete this level. As you can see, these platforms that we jump on move up and down when we stand on each of the sides. However, with the Rush Jet ability, as well as just the quickness overall, we're going to try to stand on them as least as possible. One of the other interesting facts about Mega Man 6 is it's actually the only Mega Man game to come out on the NES that wasn't published by Capcom. Capcom had no interest in releasing the game because they had already released Mega Man X on the SNES, so Nintendo of America decided to go ahead and get the rights to it, and Nintendo is actually the one who published Mega Man 6 in North America. Unfortunately, for the European market, there was never a European release. I guess it would have been way too late, and I guess Nintendo of Europe decided not to go ahead and publish it like North American Nintendo did. Now this is definitely the hardest part of the stage, trying to dodge all these robots while using the Rust Jet adapter. However, once we get past them, we can enter the robot layer of this stage. Now this boss is pretty funny overall. It ends up being a giant suit of armor with a Met controlling it, a single Met controlling it. Now it shoots out these bouncing balls that are pretty easy to dodge, as well as he shoots 3 projectiles out that if you're standing on the ground can't hit you. So use that time to charge up a full shot, so when he shoots all 3 of them out, you can jump up and deliver a full blast to him. As you can see, his health drains rather quickly, so it definitely makes for one of the easiest of Mr. X's castle stages. With him defeated, we now move on to Mr. X stage number 4. Now this stage is rather tricky to deal with because there's a lot of pitfalls and some spikes to deal with. As you can see, we have some ceiling spikes here that we have to manage over. You don't want to accidentally press the button in for too long, or you end up touching your head against the spikes and losing a life. The real threat to the stage ends up just being the overall pits that we're going to have to deal with in a second. You can also use the power armor in order to collect some power-ups there, including that energy tank. We're going to go ahead and skip over that, and now get to the part where we really have to deal with the platforming. As you can see, there's a lot of platforms to deal with, a lot of enemies on screen. However, since we've been able to get past everything so far, this part of it really isn't too difficult. Once the screen scrolls over to this part of the stage, we have another one of these long areas where we have to jump from platform to platform, watching out for the enemies. Just make sure that you take them out before attempting to make the jump. Pretty overall easy stuff to deal with. Once you made it through that area, we have a few little pits that we have to fall down before continuing on to the right. Couple last jumps to make, and then we're going to be entering the Mr. X boss stage for this level. Now, in this stage is our final showdown with Mr. X. We've been waiting to see him the whole game. We saw him in the opening, but now we finally get to meet him face to face and try to take him out once and for all. Now, he has a pretty overall interesting battle. He kind of has this wrecking ball feel that you can jump up and you have to shoot it. However, it's really easy to dodge because you can't be hit on either the far left or the far right, and his projectiles that he shoots out that hit the ground and spread out are very easy to jump over. So even though this is our final showdown with him, it ends up being very easy. Just a few charged shots and he's done. So we finally get to see Mr. X once and for all. And he exclaims that he still has enough power to destroy us, and then he changes into Dr. Wily and escapes once again in his UFO. So no matter what they try to do introducing new bosses for Mega Man to fight throughout the Mega Man series on the NES, we end up always going back to Skull Castle, some new inclination of it, even though it explodes at the end of every Mega Man game just about. And then we still have to do one last battle with Dr. Wily and our Dr. Wily stages. So this is Dr. Wily stage number 1, and it overall isn't too long of a level. Most of the Wily stages as you got through them became a little bit shorter, and were much more about the end bosses that you had to face in each of the stages. In my opinion, the boss of the stage ends up being pretty overall cool of a boss. Really not too difficult to take care of, but his design's pretty cool to look at. With our Rust Jet adapter, we're pretty much able to easily go through these different platforms and different areas to navigate through these spike paths. This fall here is definitely one of the harder ones, however with the Rush Jet we're able to make it through. You can slow down just enough so that you can see where the spikes are, in which case you can then fall and move yourself towards the open area and continue on through the stage. Jump over this guy and fly over the spikes to continue on, and then continue our path downwards. Once we finally got through that area, we have one last little room to deal with before we make it into the robot stage boss of this level. Couple last enemies. Jump over the octopus shooting the ice cubes again that we've seen many times. Fly over this guy, and then we enter the lair. Now this Wily stage boss is a giant dinosaur that we have to shoot him in the head. In order to do so, he throws out all these little platforms that go